The vessel of mutual discovery docked at Virelli-9 sideways. Not metaphorically, literally sideways. Emergency retros had failed during final approach, and the diplomatic cruiser skidded into port like a drunk stingray trying to do a barrel roll. Docking clamps groaned. Sparks flew. Someone in the medbay lost a toe. That was the third worst thing to happen that morning. The worst, arguably, was that half the ship's crew was now on mandatory bed rest. The medical AI was fried, and the galley had been repurposed to store surgical gauze and 7 crates of high-protein, low-dignity ration paste. It smelled like wet socks and broke the will of 3 convalescing officers in under 12 hours. By hour 14, the alien medical officer, Dr. Taln of the Jowl Corps Collective, stood in the middle of the hallway, muttering, "Why do your species require emotional comfort from food? Why can't you just lick minerals like everyone else?" And that was when Marcus stepped forward. He wore a grease-stained apron, a hairnet, and the flat-eyed expression of a man who'd been asked for the 1,000th time if he could just microwave something. His ID badge said Assistant Food Services Technician, Earth Division. His hands said something else entirely. "I'll cook," Marcus said. "If I can, requisition knives." Dr. Taln blinked. "You require blades? To assist medical recovery?" Marcus nodded. "Very sharp ones." A pause. "I'm not a soldier," Marcus added. "Just a chef." And somehow, that was the most suspicious thing anyone had said all week. The requisition was approved by a junior quartermaster who looked like he hadn't slept in 30 hours and had already written off the day. He handed over a culinary kit, a battered case full of knives, most of which were still sticky with old protein sludge. Marcus accepted it with reverent care, unlocking each clasp with a familiarity that gave even the hardened Kalar dock technician pause. He didn't speak much after that, just rolled up his sleeves, retied his apron with a tug, and entered what remained of the galley. A few nurses tried to tell him the kitchen had been sealed for emergency medical storage. He gave them a glance flat, unfazed, not unkind, and gestured once at the paste tubes scattered across the floor like someone had lost a war against toothpaste. They let him in. Within an hour, the smell changed. Gone was the pungent defeat of synthetic nutritional paste. In its place rose something warm and nostalgic: steam, spice, sautéed starch. It curled down the corridors like a rumor and hit exhausted crew like a slap and a hug at the same time. Dr. Taln, still triaging a Zenthari diplomat with a ruptured lung sac, paused mid-scan and muttered, "Is that bay leaf?" A Kalar nurse twitched an antenna. "It smells dangerous, but soothing." The crew's first real meal in 16 hours consisted of thick vegetable stew, spicy flatbread seared on a repurposed sterilization plate, and something Marcus only referred to as Comfort Protocol 1. It didn't follow any interspecies nutrition guidelines. It didn't need to. The room fell silent except for chewing and the occasional sound of someone quietly weeping into their bowl. "Does it heal?" Dr. Taln whispered to himself, scanning the patients again. Minor signs of stress reduction, slight stabilization of vitals. Even the chronically dehydrated Eltian navigator was sipping broth voluntarily. Marcus ladled another portion for a groaning Hellery lieutenant and wiped the ladle clean in a single movement that seemed far too crisp for someone stirring soup. Then he went back to chopping something root-like, the blade moving so fast and so clean it didn't make a sound. Taln narrowed his 3 eyes. That wasn't chopping, that was tactical dissection. The next day, there was a line outside the kitchen window. Not for food, but to watch. A pair of Kalar engineers stood shoulder to shoulder with a Zenthari linguist, all staring in baffled awe as Marcus sliced through a mound of raw tubers like they'd offended his ancestors. He wasn't flashy, wasn't theatrical, he just moved with this eerie efficiency. Every slice uniform, every motion practiced, never wasting time or movement. "Is that a bone cleaver?" whispered the Kalar. "Why does he have a bone cleaver?" asked the Zenthari. He made soup out of nothing but emergency starch, dried seaweed, and a broken egg timer. Someone behind them said, "I saw it." Someone else muttered. He sharpened the knife on the edge of a ration crate, with one hand, while the soup simmered. Within hours, the rumors escalated. Marcus had defused a thermal bomb once using a pressure cooker lid and a whisk. Marcus could identify alien physiology from how someone salted their food. Marcus once sliced an entire Jaraxxus boar while blindfolded and reciting human poetry. Someone claimed he cooked with such focus that an approaching security alert had bounced off his personal bubble of serenity. Through it all, Marcus said nothing, just cooked. Dr. Taln began recording him on day 2. Purely for medical study, he insisted, even as he placed a discreet lens in the corner of the kitchen. Nutritional therapy, mental stabilization via ingestible cultural artifacts, entirely scientific. "Doctor," Marcus said one evening, "I can see the camera." Taln blinked. "Yes, it's part of the medical apparatus, standard practice." Marcus raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The eyebrow was somehow more unnerving than the cleaver. That day's meal was a complex blend of seared root fish from the Calar trade crates, pickled greens, and a tangy reduction made from rehydrated protein mash, lemon oil, and something Marcus pulled from his apron pouch, labeled simply Spice Blend 4C. Taln recorded every motion. He watched Marcus slice across the grain of the fish, not along it, a sacrilege in Calar tradition, yet somehow the result melted on the tongue and reduced a Calar envoy to soft, uncontrollable weeping. The envoy later requested a formal culinary alliance. Taln marked it in his notes as emotional breakthrough via umami. On the evening of the 3rd day, Marcus stopped by the medbay to drop off nutritional packets he'd developed for post-surgical recovery. Custom labeled, species-specific, allergen-free. Taln read the packets. The ratios were spot on. Correct macronutrient balance, ideal sodium levels, hydration-adjusted contents, not guesses, not close approximations. "This is trauma-grade supplementation," Taln said slowly. "You've read JAL Core medical protocols." Marcus tilted his head. "I read." "Which protocols?" "All of them." Taln's data tablet slipped slightly in his hand. "Marcus, may I ask?" "I'm not a soldier," Marcus said, already turning. "I didn't say you were," Taln replied quietly. Marcus paused, then offered a small smile. "Good." Then he was gone. A junior station tech named Robbie reported an odd event the same night. While hauling spare piping through the rear galley corridor, he'd stumbled, tripped, and knocked a 3-meter rack of utensils toward Marcus. "I swear I thought it was going to impale him," Robbie said to Taln. "But he didn't even look up, just stuck out a spatula and caught the thing like it was a falling napkin." "A spatula," Taln repeated. "A spatula. Caught a steel rack. With a flick of the wrist, balanced it, just caught it." Taln wrote in his notes, "Subject displays advanced reflex training typical of Tier 3 combat units. Also, makes excellent fish curry." On the 4th morning, Taln was awoken by a strange smell. He followed it to the kitchen, now fully reclaimed by Marcus, and found an open pot of boiling something. The smell was briny, sharp, spicy, and rising from the surface were several small orbs that hissed and popped. Marcus turned down the heat and gently ladled one into a nearby bowl. "What is this?" Taln asked. "Pickled egg," Marcus said. "Earth delicacy." Taln made a note. "Smells like memory loss and alarm. It'll grow on you." An Ikaran customs agent tried one later that day and declared peace with humanity on the spot. That night, Marcus was chopping greens for a fermented salad when a noise rippled through the station, then all the lights cut out. Emergency klaxons blared. Virelli-9's ancient systems flickered. Red lights spun. Somewhere, far down the hall, something exploded. "Unidentified ship breach," came the garbled intercom. "Unauthorized boarding. Pirate signatures confirmed. Security offline. All personnel, shelter in place." In the medbay, chaos erupted. Patients screamed. A nurse knocked over a tray of vials trying to barricade the door. Someone tried to throw a surgical scanner. And then, calmly, Marcus stepped out of the galley. His apron was stained with something green. A 12-inch boning knife hung loose in one hand. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes flicked once toward the corridor, calculating, quick. He exhaled through his nose, like someone about to sear something difficult. "Stay here," he said to the staff. Taln grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" "Just stepping out." "You are not armed." Marcus looked down at the knife, then back up. "I cook." Then he was gone. And somehow, that was the most terrifying thing Taln had seen all week. Marcus moved like someone who didn't know he was supposed to be afraid. The station lights flickered again, casting the corridor in pulsing red and shadow. Somewhere deeper inside Virelli-9, the emergency bulkheads were stuttering open and shut, failing to respond to any of the compromised security subroutines. A distant metal scream rang out as another docking port gave way. Dr. Taln, watching through the medbay's rear window, saw Marcus walk into that chaos with nothing but an apron, a pair of dish gloves tucked into his back pocket, and a boning knife that shimmered like it had been honed to a molecular edge. It hadn't. It was just very, very well maintained. Taln hadn't been especially religious before that moment. He was now seriously reconsidering. The first pirate made the mistake of being loud. He came stomping down the central corridor in a patchwork suit that looked like it had been assembled during a bar fight, hydraulic boots clunking, outdated plasma pistol held sideways, and a respirator mask shaped like a sneer. He was yelling something about surrender. Marcus didn't wait. He closed the gap in a handful of steps, pivoted clean around a cargo cart, and rammed the handle of the knife directly into the pirate's elbow joint. The weapon dropped. A heartbeat later, the blade itself slid along the pirate's thigh, not into the femoral artery, but close enough to make the pirate hit the ground, whimpering and holding his leg like it might fall off. One down. Non-lethal. Clean. Efficient. The second pirate came around the corner with a shock baton. Marcus threw a sauté pan at him. It hit flat across the helmet with a whunk that echoed through the corridor. The pirate spun and crashed into the wall. Marcus followed and swept the pirate's feet with a motion that looked suspiciously like the turn step from a culinary prep dance, something Marcus definitely should not know. The third pirate lasted a little longer. He had the sense to fire. Twice. The shots went wide. Marcus darted sideways, using a utility cabinet as cover, then appeared suddenly behind the man, slamming the back of his own knife handle into the pirate's neck where armor met tissue. Not hard enough to kill, just enough to induce rapid unconsciousness. Taln's voice came faintly through the kitchen.com. "Marcus, you've disarmed 3 armed combatants in 30 seconds. Marcus exhaled slowly. "I was trained in timing risotto. You get used to multitasking." By the time the medical wing was secured, the pirates had discovered a problem. They'd expected disarray, chaos, vulnerable, injured. Instead, they were losing personnel to a man wielding cookware like sacred relics. 2 more were found locked in a walk-in refrigeration unit. One of them had frostbite. The other kept muttering something about a pan with eyes. A Virelli-9 repair drone caught footage of Marcus sliding under a closing door, hooking a pirate's boot with a meat thermometer, and catching a dropped weapon with his offhand. The video went viral on 4 comms channels within minutes. By the time Station Command got wind of the situation, Marcus was already back at the medbay, washing his knife. Not with urgency, just casual, habitual scrubbing. A small nick on his right wrist was the only visible sign of injury. He rinsed it with hot water and wrapped it in kitchen wrap without comment. The medical staff stared at him like he'd just declared war on gravity and won. Dr. Taln approached cautiously. "You are injured." "Minor cut," Marcus said. "Not deep. Doesn't need sutures." "You took down 5 combatants." 6. Taln paused. "Where's the 6th?" "In the freezer. He's fine. He tried to throw a crate of yams at me." There was a beat of silence. Taln inhaled slowly through his breathing pores. "You are very good at defending kitchens." Marcus gave a small nod. "You don't let people mess with your station." He said it like a sacred mantra. Taln wasn't entirely sure it wasn't. They forced him to rest for an hour, over his weak protests. Taln examined the wrist. The wound was shallow but jagged. Marcus had likely strained the muscle bracing that sauté pan. The wrist wrap helped with the swelling, but Taln insisted he not return to prep work immediately. "You are injured, and human recovery protocols for wrist strain are well documented. You require at least 72 hours of reduced load to allow for tendon stabilization and to prevent further inflammation." "I can still instruct," Marcus replied, sitting up stiffly on the medbay cot. "You'll instruct from that chair," Taln said. "And no chopping." Marcus reluctantly complied. "Sort of." He had 2 orderlies bring prep tables into the medbay's side lounge. With one arm cradled in an elevated sling, he coached a confused Kalar nurse through the art of julienning space carrots. The nurse held the knife like it might bite him. Marcus corrected his grip with quiet, firm patience. It's not about speed, it's about control. But your movements earlier? That was different. This is food. You don't rush food. Later, Taln caught Marcus sketching cross-sections of alien stomachs and annotating digestion cycles with temperature tolerances for optimum absorption. Marcus, how do you know all this? I've cooked for diplomats. Taln gave him a long, flat stare. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Station Commander Reese, a broad-shouldered former fleet officer with a surgically repaired knee and a fondness for strong tea, requested a private meeting the next morning. Marcus, still favoring his wrist but otherwise composed, arrived at the temporary command center wearing a clean apron and carrying a thermos of soup. It's mushroom barley, he said, handing it to Reese. You didn't eat yesterday. Reese looked at the soup, then at Marcus, then back at the soup. Son, she said finally, I've had Marine veterans who wouldn't go after armed pirates bare-handed. You went after them with a kitchen knife. Marcus didn't respond. Reese sipped the soup. Damn, that's good, she muttered. Then she leaned forward. Tell me, honestly, were you Special Forces, Culinary Division of Earth Recon, some covert knife unit we don't know about? Marcus raised one brow. That's a thing? Reese narrowed her eyes. Marcus shrugged. I was a chef on the diplomatic food exchange program. Earth assigned me to the vessel of mutual discovery after I passed 8 cross-species certification modules. I took some first aid training. That's it. That's it? Marcus hesitated. I worked in a few kitchens that got rowdy. Reese opened her mouth, closed it, took another sip of soup, and let it go. I'm offering you a position, she said. Head of Station Security, dual title, Executive Chef and Chief of Tactical Readiness. I cook, Marcus said. Exactly. The proposal spread faster than soup steam. By noon, half the crew had heard that Marcus was being given command of the station's defensive drills. Rumors flourished. He'd trained with monks who used spatulas as throwing weapons. He once filleted a combat drone. He'd turned down a weapons contract because it required processed cheese. Meanwhile, Marcus was back in the kitchen. His wrist was still stiff. He moved slower, but he cooked. Taln observed from the corner. He's avoiding flashback triggers, he murmured to his datapad, retreating into routine, using food to process trauma. Behind him, a young alien intern, Zib, round-bodied and curious, scribbled notes furiously. Does every human enter battle with recipes? Zib asked, eyes wide. Not usually, Taln replied. Do all of them smell like garlic and destiny? Definitely not. Later that week, Marcus hosted a small culinary session. Cultural exchange, he explained. Food diplomacy. The first attempts were a disaster. The Kalar overboiled the tea bags with the paper wrappers. Zib accidentally baked a starch loaf directly onto the heating coil. A Zenthari diplomat mistook powdered sugar for dried salt and nearly passed out from the sweetness. But they laughed. They shared. One of the pirates, now in medical custody and under heavy watch, asked quietly if he could try the soup. Marcus obliged. The man cried halfway through his bowl. 3 days after the pirate attack, the crew threw a quiet, informal celebration. The medical bay was no longer overflowing. Everyone had eaten real food. Even Taln admitted his stress indicators were down. As the gathering wound down, Reese approached Marcus one last time. You haven't answered the offer. I'm thinking, Marcus said, but if I accept? Reese waited. Nobody microwaves fish. Ever. Not even once. She nodded solemnly. Deal. Marcus smiled. Then he walked back to the galley and locked one drawer behind the counter. Inside, resting on velvet, was a single, gleaming knife. The case read, "For emergencies only." Zib started wearing an apron. It was 3 sizes too big, dragged on the floor, and had "Kiss the Cook" written in faded Terran script across the chest, which no one had translated for him. But he wore it with pride and the grave solemnity of someone donning armor. Chef Marcus has accepted me as his Susu assistant, he declared to the Virelli-9 maintenance staff, who were still trying to scrub thermal scarring off docking arm 4. He told me to stand near the sink and not touch anything. It is a sacred trust. Did he actually say that? Asked one of the techs. Zib held up a piece of paper with "Don't touch anything" written in Marcus's handwriting. It was an invitation, Zib said reverently. Since the pirate attack, life aboard Virelli-9 had slowly returned to its usual tempo of bureaucratic limbo and cross-species cargo arguments. The vessel of mutual discovery was still undergoing repairs, welders now worked right side up, and the medical wing had returned to functioning with only mild chaos. Doctor? Taln's stress levels remained within tolerable Joule core parameters, mostly thanks to a steady diet of Marcus's root soups and cautious optimism. But for Marcus, things were changing. He'd agreed to the dual-role station security advisor and head of culinary operations. Temporary, he insisted, just until the station stabilizes. Commander Reese hadn't pushed back. She only asked if he needed more knives. He didn't, but he did need ingredients. Real ones. So he made a list. The supply run to Food Depot Theta 6 was supposed to be routine. It wasn't. The shuttle was Marcus, Taln under protest, Zib under stealth, and 2 station security officers who'd never guarded a chef before and kept calling him Sir every time he asked for salt. Depot Theta 6 was a floating crate with dreams of grandeur, a commercial food hub run by a bored AI, 2 vending bots, and a single organic clerk who wore novelty socks as a personality substitute. The moment Marcus stepped off the shuttle ramp, the clerk's eyes widened. "You're him." Marcus blinked. "Who?" "The chef. From the footage? The guy who took out 6 pirates with a frying pan? Boning knife." Right, that guy. Can you sign my apron?" Marcus looked at him like he'd asked to borrow a lung. "I just need galangal root, maybe some fresh coriander. Can you do the knife flip?" Zib was already filming with a handheld recorder. Taln looked like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. Marcus sighed and turned to the produce racks. Within 10 minutes, he'd sourced 5 replacement spices, 4 root vegetables that passed cross-species safety protocols, and a sack of Earth-style lentils. He checked the packaging with the same quiet intensity someone might reserve for a bomb schematic. It was during checkout that things went sideways. A group of mercenaries, clearly trying to look like civilian freighter crew, entered the depot. They moved in formation, eyes scanning too sharply for shoppers, and one carried a scanning visor that was absolutely not authorized for food vendor use. Taln stiffened. "They're searching for someone." Marcus's posture didn't change. He continued placing items into his satchel efficiently, calmly, but now with one hand lightly resting near the loop of his apron, where his utility sheath sat. The lead mercenary approached the counter. "We're looking for a man," he said. "Terran, medium build, knife skills." The clerk laughed nervously and pointed at Marcus. "You mean him?" Marcus closed his eyes for a second. "Just one." Taln muttered, "I am not prepared to triage a food fight today." The merc raised a brow. "You, the one that embarrassed the Black Quarters pirates on Virelli-9? Marcus replied with quiet certainty, "I buttered toast." The mercenary glanced at the security officers, then back at Marcus. "Your knife says otherwise." Marcus met his gaze. "You want to talk recipes, or are you here to cause problems?" The mercenary leaned forward. "You made a lot of enemies, chef. Only the ones who don't season properly." Zib whispered, "Is this how humans negotiate, with metaphors and menace?" "No," Taln whispered back. "This is just Marcus." Then it started. The first movement came from Marcus's elbow, not his knife hand. He shoved the satchel forward into the merc's chest, unbalancing him just long enough to spin to the left. His boning knife was out, not slashing, but low, defensive. A second merc lunged forward with a stun baton. Marcus sidestepped, kicked a crate of pickled sea fennel into the man's path, and used the flat of the knife to knock the weapon aside. It hit the floor and sparked wildly. Zib shrieked, ducked under a counter, and started narrating in real time. Chef Marcus has entered aggressive sauté posture. He is dicing a man with a stick. Wait, that is not a stick. That is a limb. Oh stars. Taln tried to drag Zib back. "This is a tactical withdrawal. Come with me if you want to not die." Meanwhile, Marcus used a metal serving tray to deflect a thrown blade, pivoted off the edge of the counter, and drove his shoulder into the ribs of the third mercenary, who collapsed with a winded groan. The lead merc, recovering, shouted, "You think this makes you invincible?" "No," Marcus replied, "just very, very annoyed." The merc raised his weapon again, only to be disarmed by a flying ladle. Not thrown by Marcus. By Zib. "I did a bravery," the little alien screamed, ducking again. Marcus nodded once, then disabled the last mercenary with a clean sweep of the knee and a wrist lock that left the man whimpering. Silence followed, mostly. Zib was hyperventilating. Taln was applying an antiseptic swab to his own arm after a glancing baton blow. Marcus stood very still, breathing in slow, measured beats, knife at his side. The clerk peeked over the counter. "So, still want the coriander?" Station Commander Reese filed the incident report under civilian preemption of hostile actors. Technically accurate. Marcus didn't even receive a formal reprimand. Zib, however, received a medal. Technically it was a repurposed food safety badge, but he wore it like a trophy. Back on Virelli-9, things settled. Mostly. Marcus had to agree to carry a comlink at all times, in case of future emergencies. He insisted on taping it to the inside of a spice cabinet, where it would at least feel at home. He resumed light cooking duties, no heavy chopping yet, as Taln insisted he let his wrist fully recover. The swelling had gone down, but strength hadn't fully returned. Marcus adapted by training others, rotating small groups of volunteers through the galley in structured lessons. "No flour fights," he warned on day one. "Anyone who burns rice will mop the ceiling." Zib raised one appendage. "Chef, if I burn the rice and start a flour fight, do I clean both?" "Yes." Zib looked oddly proud. One quiet evening, Taln visited the galley and found Marcus alone, slicing vegetables one-handed. "Still hurts?" "A bit. Normal recovery timeline for wrist strain is 7 to 10 days. You're at day 8, progressing well." Marcus didn't look up. "Cooking helps." Taln paused. "You don't sleep much, do you?" Marcus looked at the cutting board. "No." Taln sat down across from him. "You say you're not a soldier. I believe that. But I think something happened before this job, something that made you treat a knife like a shield." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Then, I fed people in bad places. War zones, disaster zones, places that smelled like burnt ozone and blood." Taln didn't interrupt. "They said food wasn't the priority. I made it one. Some days, that was the only thing holding the crew together." Taln nodded slowly. "So you learned to fight, not for violence, but to protect the ritual of eating." Marcus looked up. "It sounds absurd when you say it." "It sounds human," Taln replied. At the next crew gathering, Marcus presented a dish he called Earth Brunch Fusion. It included soft-boiled core eggs, Terran-style hash with sea spice, and a dessert that confused everyone but made them all feel unreasonably happy. Zib handed out printed menus that featured doodles of Marcus in a heroic apron. Reese gave a toast. "To the man who saved our lives, cooked our meals, and never once let anyone microwave fish." The galley erupted in cheers. Marcus raised a mug. "It's all in the wrist," Zib shouted, "which is medically recovering according to plan." Everyone applauded again. Marcus smiled just a little and turned back to the kitchen. In the drawer labeled, "For emergencies only," the knife still waited. Clean, sharp, ready. Marcus didn't like ceremonies. He'd endured one once, long ago, standing stiff in an undersized dress uniform while people applauded a meal he didn't remember cooking. There had been a plaque, a commemorative spoon, a speech that mispronounced gremolata 3 times. He'd vanished the next day and never looked back. So, when Virelli-9 Station Command invited him to the Emergency Brunch and Culinary Resilience Award presentation, Marcus made 2 requests. 1, that it not be called that. 2, that he be allowed to cook the meal himself. Commander Reese agreed on both counts. Mostly, she renamed it Community Gathering. Everyone else still called it the brunch. By the time the event approached, the station was running smoother than ever. The vessel of mutual discovery was nearly repaired, its crew recovering well on a steady diet of real food, actual sleep, and fewer impromptu explosions. Medical staff reported higher morale and lower stress biomarkers than any point in the past year. Taln credited this to ongoing nutritional recalibration. Marcus called it having a kitchen again. The medbay's dietary board now featured rotating dishes from 15 species. None of it came in tubes. Even the vending machines had been replaced with warming trays and spice packets. Zib laminated the menus and handed them out like collector's cards. On the morning of the brunch, Marcus arrived at the galley at what could charitably be called pre-dawn. His wrist was better, no pain now, though he stretched it carefully every hour. The strain had taught him restraint, which, ironically, had made him even more precise. He wore a fresh apron, no logo, just heavy canvas, stained at the edges with work. The ingredients were laid out: earth grains, spiced glazed beast meat from the Kalar shipment, native station root fruit, rehydrated jal core mushrooms, and a tall stack of cracked eggs in 7 different colors. He had 36 dishes to make. Marcus cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders. Then he began. At 0900 standard, the doors opened. The galley wasn't designed for gatherings. It had become one anyway. Someone had strung lights. There were tables, now actual tables, borrowed from the logistics bay and polished until they shone. And there was food. Savory stews balanced with cooling creams, griddle cakes layered with fermented honey leaf, protein loaves with crusts so perfect, a synthesizers diplomat asked if they were ceremonial. Marcus explained they were just toasted. Zib arrived wearing 3 aprons at once, one tied like a cape. He passed out samples with religious fervor. Chef Marcus calls this gravy. It has no known parallel in your cultures. Please prepare your hearts. Taln hovered near a table, analyzing enzyme responses mid-bite. Reese leaned back in her chair, eyeing a plate of crispy fried root slices. He really won't accept a formal award? No, Taln replied. He'll accept that people eat. And the security post? Taln considered. He hasn't said no. Reese nodded once and made a mental note to issue him a badge anyway. Then came the unexpected. A communications ping high priority, encryption flagged flashed on Reese's wristband. She frowned, tapped it open, and read the alert. Long-range sensor breach, she muttered. Ship just dropped from stealth. Marcus looked up from plating a dish. Pirate? No, worse. Freelance syndicate, heavily armed, claiming salvage rights. The room quieted. Marcus set down his tongs. They think Virelli-9 is vulnerable. Reese was already speaking into her comm. All active security to defense stations, lock down bays, get the shields up, patch me to their captain. Taln looked at Marcus. You should sit this one out. Marcus shook his head. I don't fight for free. Taln blinked. Are you bargaining? I'm saying they don't get brunch. Zib gasped. Chef, he whispered, this is a sacred day. Marcus looked at him. Exactly. The attack was fast. The syndicate ship launched a false hail, then opened fire on the outer docking arms with pulse disruptors. The shields held, barely, but it was clear they weren't bluffing. The station's tactical systems, still partially jury-rigged after the last incident, weren't ready for a sustained engagement. But the station had Marcus. He didn't go to the armory. He went to the kitchens. There, in the drawer, labeled, "For emergencies only," he opened the case. Inside was the knife. It wasn't fancy, no engraving, no embedded tech, just steel, balanced, familiar. Marcus picked it up, held it in his hand like a memory. Then he walked to the mess hall. The pirates breached through the secondary maintenance port. They expected resistance drones, maybe armed guards. Instead, they found a man in an apron standing in front of a food cart. He didn't speak. He just moved. It was never clear exactly what happened. By the time security feeds came back online, the fight was over. 3 mercenaries had been disarmed with actual disarmament. 2 more had been restrained with cling wrap and cooling gel. One was curled inside an overturned stockpot, whispering something about the eyes of the sauce. Medical scans later confirmed all injuries were non-lethal. 4 broken bones, several concussions, 1 laceration stitched with culinary thread. And Marcus? He walked into the med bay 10 minutes later, holding his own shoulder. Rotator cuff strain, he said flatly. Took a fall on tile. Taln scanned him. You need a sling. Minimum 2 weeks. No chopping. Marcus sighed. So many onions. You can supervise, Taln offered. Marcus nodded. That's worse. Zib offered him a grilled sandwich. For morale. He took it, winced, ate it anyway. The following day, Virelli-9 was declared secure. The crew gathered for a quieter brunch, smaller, more subdued, but no less heartfelt. Marcus attended with his arm in a sling. He didn't cook. He sat watched. Zib had cooked most of the meal himself. It wasn't perfect. The eggs were overdone. The tea too bitter. But it was food. Real food. Marcus chewed slowly, nodded once and said, You did good. Zib glowed in 6 different places. Commander Reese approached after the meal. Still won't take the security post? I like knives. I don't like uniforms. Fair. She smiled. We're commissioning a new role. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Director of Culinary Security. He snorted. That's not a real thing. It is now. He didn't answer, just leaned back, arm still in a sling, and looked at the people eating. No alarms, no explosions, just laughter, food. Even Taln was smiling, sort of. It was hard to tell with Jalcor facial structure. Marcus sighed and nodded once. Okay, he said, but only if no one ever microwaves fish. Reese raised a solemn hand. Not even on accident. Zib saluted with a spatula. Taln muttered, I've documented the trauma responses. Never again. The station lights dimmed slightly as evening fell, casting warm gold over the mess hall. Somewhere in the background, music played softly, an earth tune, unfamiliar to most, but comforting in its rhythm. Marcus stood, walked slowly to the galley, and placed the knife back into its case. He didn't lock it this time. He simply closed the lid. Some things, once opened, didn't need to be sealed again. They just needed to be respected. And so, aboard a spinning trade station where interstellar treaties were negotiated between bites of spiced flatbread, the legend of Marcus, the man who fed, fought, and folded omelets with equal grace continued to grow. But Marcus didn't care about legends. He just cared that the tea was brewed right, and that nobody, under any circumstances, ever tried to microwave fish again.